Dear brothers and sisters, as we continue our journey in this life, as we continue to strive to reach paradise and go through the different tests and trials that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala puts us through, we strive to continue becoming the best. We strive to perfection. We strive to do our best to reach the goal that we need to reach heaven. And throughout our journey, we come across our friends, we come across our family members, we come across the people that we know who every now and then will do mistakes. Just as we do, everybody around us make mistakes. And a key factor in dealing with this is remembering the ayah, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَمَا عَلَى الرَّسُولِ إِلَّا الْبَلَاغُ, that a messenger's sole purpose is to deliver the message. So when we're dealing with people, when we're trying to guide, when we're trying to correct, we have to think about dealing with them from that main concept. Is that when I deal with people from the perspective of them making mistakes, I have to think about it from perspective that I am in nowhere to judge. I am in no position to try to put them on put myself on a pedestal to try to judge their mistakes. So, looking into this, the second concept we have to understand is how the Prophet ﷺ dealt with those mistakes. And as he said, the Prophet ﷺ said, كُلُّ بَنِي آدَمْ خَطَّاءٌ وَخَيْرُ الْخَطَّائِينَ التَّوَّابُونَ. Every mankind make mistakes. Every single person that lives on this earth make mistakes. We all make mistakes. We probably made plenty of mistakes just today. And he's saying that the best of those people who make mistakes, those who repent to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the Prophet ﷺ is reminding us that we are committing mistakes. Not ourselves, but the people that we deal with. And we tend to look at other people's mistakes and try to correct those people's mistakes before we even look at our mistakes. So when we look at those mistakes, when we look at those issues, let's first try to fix our own problems. Let me review what I have, and we've spoken before, and a couple other people, given khutbahs, talked about how can we prevent ourselves from continuing to make those mistakes. But the focus mainly today is to talk about how do we deal with others around us when they make mistakes. Because, as I said earlier, we tend to put ourselves in a pedestal to make ourselves feel better and start judging the people around us. So as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah Al Imran, كُنْتُمْ خَيْرَ أُمَّةٍ أُخْرَجَتْ لِلنَّاسِ تَأْمُرُونَ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ وَتَنْهَوْنَ عَنِ الْمُنكَرِ. That you were from the best of the nations that came out because you're helping people find the right path, and you're helping them or helping them, stop themselves from doing mistakes or committing or continuing to do mistakes. And it's in a human nature as Muslims to look around us and feel upset and feel sad when you see another Muslim do something wrong. Whether you notice it or not, every time you see another Muslim doing something wrong, you kind of feel it in your heart like, haram, and why are they doing this? Whether it's another guy, another sister, wherever the case may be. So we have that tendency in our hearts. We know we want to help people. The problem comes of how we do it. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is teaching His beloved Prophet ﷺ to do it in the best ways. And as he says in Surah Al-Imran verses 159, وَلَوْ كُنْتَ فَضًّا غَلِيظَ الْقَلْبِ لَانْفَضُّوا مِنْ حَوْلِكَ. And if you had, if you really were mean as you were teaching people, if you were really rough teaching people, then you would have driven everybody away from around you. So let's take that as another reminder of how we need to deal with people. We go through our lives, and whether we're dealing with our children, whether we're dealing with our friends, whether we're dealing with our spouses, our co-workers, anybody that we're dealing with, we have to keep in mind that the approach that we come to them is very critical and crucial in trying to understand, or for them to be accepting of your advice. So when you come up to a person and start attacking them with their mistakes, they will become defensive the second you start talking. Versus you coming to them and talking to them in a way that you're trying to, help them understand. So, and there are plenty of examples. So when we look at the story, when the man came into the masjid, when around the Prophet ﷺ and the Sahaba and everybody was in the masjid, and the man came in and urinated, right by the door. I mean, the first reaction from the Sahaba was they wanted to get up, beat him up, kill him. They were very upset, and that's a natural reaction to have. I mean, imagine somebody just walked into the masjid right now, spilled some paint on the carpet or start writing on the wall. Every single person in this masjid would feel upset because we love this place, we love this masjid, we care for this masjid, and the first thing we're going to do is going to reach out to that person, stop him, and yell at him, if not kick him out. But then the Prophet ﷺ told him, no, let him be. Let him finish what he was doing, and then very slowly took that person and tried to understand and teach him why what was he doing was wrong. So he tried to explain to the Prophet, or tried to explain to the man why this act was wrong. So one point is that a lot of times the person that we're dealing with may not understand what they're doing is wrong. And this doesn't necessarily have to be dealing with people's mistakes when it comes to Islam. This is dealing with people making mistakes at work, people making mistakes at home, your neighbors, your friends. Because this is how we need to deal with people as they continue making mistakes. When you really think about it, a lot of times when you're driving down the road, somebody will make a left turn or right turn without giving signal. And we'll get upset because they're driving and suddenly they slow down. You start getting anxious, they turn, and we get mad. Or somebody will cut you off, somebody will do something in traffic, and we get mad, not really thinking, why did that person do that action? How many times were we driving and thinking about something that happened in our life? You have a family member that's sick, you're upset, you didn't do good in an exam, you're having some issues at work, and your focus wasn't you driving. So you make that turn, you cut somebody off, and then afterwards you feel bad. How many times do we make mistakes without really realizing that we are making those mistakes? How many times do we say things and hurt people's feelings without realizing that those mistakes have been committed? But then we turn around and don't expect the same from people. When we make mistakes, we expect people to understand. We expect people to kind of feel sorry for us. I'm sorry, I didn't mean this, I'm having some issues. But anger gets so much of us. Anger gets the best of us that when something happens, that's it, we're done. We can't see straight. Our focus becomes, how do I point the finger? How can I blame? Who do I need to blame? How can I get this out of my responsibility? We have to look the other way. I mean, the first part is, if you're really angry, you really want to point something out, cool off. Calm down a little bit. I mean, if the problem is that big, it's not going to go away. So even you thinking that while you're angry is not really going to help you. So you have to sit down, think about how you're going to approach this problem. We have to try to use logic in situations. Sometimes you just have to reason. We grew up in a culture that I don't have to explain to you why I'm telling you need to do this. And this comes a lot in a father-son relationship, in a boss, in a worker relationship. when you have people on two different levels, you feel that I have to order you into doing things. If you did something, I have to force you into changing it and doing it the other way. So logic sometimes is not our best approach. And sometimes we have to think about how can I relay that message across. We know the example of Ibrahim alayhi salam when he was talking to the king, and they're having the discussion about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala or about God in general, and if God exists and if God's around. So the first example, Ibrahim alayhi salam went and said, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala or God, creates life and takes life away. Again, the king with his, either limited knowledge or ignorance or arrogance, whatever the case may be, he decided that, I can kill people, I can let people live, right? I have that same level. So Ibrahim alayhi salam didn't stay and argue that same point with him. They said, sure, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala brings the sun from the east, why don't you bring it from the west? So he used that logic with him until the other person couldn't really argue otherwise. So we have to think about how can I, because at the end of the day, our purpose is the same. We want to do something right. So we have to convince others of how you want to do things. And sometimes we have to keep mistakes quiet. And subhanAllah, now with social media and the way things gets spread out so quickly, the minute a person or somebody makes a mistake, it's spread like wildfire. Everybody knows about it. People, if one sibling makes a mistake, all of the family members will know about it. If a friend makes a mistake, everybody will know about it in the community. Why? The Prophet ﷺ said, وَمَنْ سَتَرَ مُسْلِمًا سَتَرَهُ اللَّهُ فِي الدُّنْيَا وَالْآخِرَةِ. Whoever safeguards the secret of a Muslim, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will safeguard their secrets in this dunya and in the hereafter. Sometimes we have to realize that if I know there is a problem, if I know somebody made a mistake, I just need to keep it to myself. What good is it really going to do for me to go around and saying so-and-so made a mistake, or so-and-so did this? Look at him, or look at her. Look at how they're doing this. Look at how they're praying. Look at how they're dressing. Look at that, how they're talking, they're walking, they're eating. Somebody did this to their family. Somebody did this to their spouse or to their wife or their children. We have to really be smart about dealing with people's mistakes. Imagine that same scenario happened to you. Would you want people going around spreading those same issues about you to everybody around them? Those are a lot of times things that we take for granted. Don't think that you know knowledge. Don't think that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave you the opportunity to look at people's mistakes just so you know. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is testing every single person. He's testing every one of us. He wants to see how you're going to deal with those situations. If somebody makes a mistake against you, how are you going to deal with it? Where's your patience? How are you going to retaliate? If somebody entrusted you with a secret, somebody saw you do something, or you saw somebody do something and said, don't tell anybody. Or, felt embarrassed or felt ashamed for doing it, how well do we safeguard that? How well do we follow what the Prophet ﷺ said or what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling us? All of those things are different ways we have to look into when we're dealing with problems, when we're dealing with mistakes. And we really have to take the drama out of mistakes. We really seriously have to take the drama out of our community and our societies. Because what we do these days is that we take the smallest problem that happens between siblings, between family members, between friends, and we blow it out of proportion. we make it so big that it starts having the snowball effect. A little mistake that affects two friends will start involving their families and everybody around them, because we gave it more than that problem deserved. If it's a little problem, keep it a little problem. If it's a huge problem, then deal with it. Don't let it sit. Don't let it cook, as they say, and give shaitan plenty of time to make it even worse. All of those are problems that we face ourselves. Because if you notice, throughout the whole khutbah, the way to deal with those mistakes and the way to deal with those problems are fixing things within our own selves. Me having that extra level of patience when dealing with being attacked or people making mistakes against me. Me having the little patience to try to understand, why did that person do this? Why did they say this about me? When they talked about me, why did they do it? Because the first reaction or the first response that we get is they're trying to make me look bad, or they don't like me, or, you think of a reason. We have plenty of those. But yet, we fail to give them the benefit of the doubt. Scholars said if you can't, give your brother or sister, I can't remember, it was like 70 or 50 excuses, and if you couldn't find one, just say maybe there is an excuse that I couldn't find. We don't even give them one excuse for doing what they did. Maybe they forgot. Maybe they were going through hardships. Maybe they were thinking something else. We get to 3 or 5 excuses and we stop. We don't even get to the point of saying, well, maybe they really didn't know, or maybe there is, an excuse that I don't know of. قُلْ قَوْلِ هَذَا وَاسْتَغْفِرُ اللَّهَ لِي وَلَكُمْ. Ask God's forgiveness. Alhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salam ala ashrafi khalqillah, Sayyidina Muhammad salawatullahi wa salamu alayhi. Dear brothers and sisters, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said in Surah An-Nahl verses 125, ادعو إلى سبيل ربك بالحكمة والموعظة الحسنة وجادلهم بالتي هي أحسن. As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is guiding us and telling us to follow the right path, He's also giving us the guidelines on how to deal with those mistakes. And He said, guide people to the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, guide your people to the right path with wisdom, with true guidance. Al-maw'ad al-hasana, sweet guidance, something very tender. Be very gentle with them when you're trying to relay that message. So, how hard is it for us to be very thoughtful of the people around us when they make those mistakes? How difficult is it for us to swallow our ego when we're going through those mistakes? Because a lot of times our arrogance, our ego, our self-confidence, or what we feel is self-confidence, tells us that, no, somebody made a mistake, that's it. And we forget that from the beginning of creation, from the beginning of the creation of Adam, alayhi salam, a mistake was made. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did not keep reminding him of this mistake over and over and over and over again. He made the mistake, they seeked Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's forgiveness, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave it to them, and then they moved on. So where are we from looking at those mistakes, looking at the people that we love, looking at the people that we know, and patching those relationships? Where are we from connecting with the people that we don't talk to anymore? Because at the end of the day, we love each other. at the end of the day, we're all one big family. We just let our ego, we let our arrogance, we let our ignorance, we all have issues. We all have problems. And we let those problems get in the middle of our path to reach Jannah, inshallah.